Hello there, Ray here. 1.19 actually brings the Sculk sensor into survival. That means my OP AFK Fish Farm from 2 years ago now can finally be used in your worlds. And out of the 37 new farms and machines for 1.19, I think this one is one of the most useful. AFK Fish Farms are one of the most productive farms in the game of Minecraft, producing 23 unique items. But the best loot that you can get, known as treasure loot, won't come from this simple AFK Fish Farm, but instead you'll only get junk and fish loot. To get the prize treasure loot, which includes nautilus shells, name tags, saddles, and enchanted versions of books, bows, and fishing rods, you will need a bigger body of water that has no obstructions in it. So the challenge is trying to detect when a fish bites on the bobber without actually having anything nearby. Sculk sensors can detect all sorts of different things that happen in the game, including casting and retrieving of fishing rods. But I don't actually use this in my farm. I actually use the splashing of the bobber in order to detect when a fish nibbles and pull the rod in just at that time. But it's not that simple, as just the bobber sitting on top of water will create vibrations that the Sculk sensor will activate for. So let me explain how my OP fish farm actually works while pointing out the different parts. And remember, if you use any of my farms, make sure to give me credit and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy my journey in trying to farm up every item in the game of Minecraft. So the footprint of this build, you'll need at least have a 10 by 10 area to fit it in and a little bit extra for multiplayer. So let's go ahead and we'll start out. What we want to do is have 2 wool, a sticky piston, then 2 building blocks like this. This is going to be the center. Have your Sculk sensor placed in there. We're then going to come in with wool and put it on these 3 sides of the Sculk sensor to prevent other things from interfering with it. Also going to place some wool here, and we're going to place the rest of the wool above it. This will just shelter it from other distractions that it could accidentally hear and interfere with your fishing. After 4 layers here on this level, we're going to place in a trapdoor. Then we're going to top that off by putting wool here and here, leaving this one open and placing a wool on top. Now we'll come in and connect this trapdoor with some redstone, which goes from the Sculk sensor and starts out with dust there, then a repeater on 4 ticks, which then goes into a dust that goes all the way up, points to the trapdoor. That way when the bobber goes down, it will immediately send the signal up to the trapdoor after a short delay, letting the player reel in the fishing rod. Now the place where the player is going to AFK is going to be here. We're just going to put in a block such as a pressure plate so that water doesn't leak out. Then we're going to go ahead and put in a little walkway so you can get to your fish farm. And between the pressure plate and the trapdoor, we're going to have the soul sand. This is going to be used to actually push the bobber upwards. Now just above this, we're going to place in some blocks. I like to use glass so you can kind of see how the AFK fishing is going on. With this being the center, we're going to go out 2 blocks in every direction around it. And we're going to fill in the area. This is going to make a nice little bowl that's going to hold in all the water which is needed for the fish to actually drop treasure loot when they're pulled in. We're going to have some trapdoors here and here to hold back the water, and we're going to place in our sign on the back side of this trapdoor right here. And the sign is used for the player to click on without actually reeling in or out the fishing rod. Now we have the bottom of the bowl to hold the water. We're going to put in the sides. The sides are going to be 2 blocks on every side high, and we'll take this all the way around. So now it should look like this. Now it's time to come in with your water. We need to have a water source at this level down here as well as this one. That's how the bubble columns actually work. And this all have to be water sources as well. We can start out by using water or ice along this side here, every other one, and then also doing every other one here. And then just do a similar thing for the top layer. And just like that, you have enough water to actually get treasure loot if the bobber is in the very center. So at this point, the farm does sort of work. We would hop in here. We can see that we throw out the rod and then aim at this sign here. Once a fish does grab onto it, it is going to actually still activate the Sculk sensor, which will allow us to pull in. But at this point, the bobber can still accidentally bob, activating the sensor even though a fish hasn't bit. So besides the bubble column, the real secret of my OP fish farm is actually keeping the bobber in place, such a position where it doesn't make accidental noises for the Sculk sensor to pick up. Notice that the bobber itself is a special size, and after about 50 hours of testing, I found the perfect position to keep the bobber in so that it will always work properly. So the way we do this is actually using boats First, we're going to come in and put in a chain that is facing this direction. That way we can place the boats on it. It gives us a really precise block height, which is needed in order to have the boat stack up perfectly to hold the bobber. And now we come in with a pressure plate there. Now we're going to place in the boats. This is a bit tricky, but what we're going to do is have a boat on the edge of this block. So it looks like that. We're then going to come in with walls, and we're going to place a wall that is 2 blocks in from the edge. Now we're going to come in and remove the block underneath of the boat, so it should be completely sitting on top of the chain. That's perfect. We do this so that the boat will not accidentally try to float on top of the water, but will stay on the block. We're then going to move it and push it and drive it over to this wall here and just align it just like so. Now we need a second boat to get the perfect size. We're going to place a block in just like this, which we're going to run the boat up against. Place in another boat right here. Remove this wall. Then drive this boat towards this block. Now it looks like this boat pushed up against that wall there, and we can then remove this block, which will drop it down on top of the other boat. And with the 2 boats stacked on top of the chain, this gives us the perfect distance between the water and the underside of the boat, which has a collision, meaning that if you throw a bobber, the bobber is going to hit it and it's not going to be able to go any higher. The bubble columns underneath also keep the bobber up. This keeps it in the perfect limbo between touching the water so you can actually catch a fish and not constantly creating bobs, which could accidentally be interpreted by the Sculk sensor as a fish being nibbling on the bobber. This way, the bobber only goes down when an actual fish bites onto the bobber, as you can see. With mostly nothing being able to be placed in this water area here, the best way to get the bobber into the center of the water is to first have it being aligned with the block underneath of it and then get pushed upwards using the bubble columns so that it is directly in the center of all this water in order to get that treasure loot. With the wool surrounding the Sculk sensor, plus the Sculk sensor placed down really low, meaning that it won't accidentally hear anything above the bobber, but barely can hear it, which guarantees that you don't accidentally get any other random stuff happening, making noises that can interfere with the AFK fishing. So now the fish farm is working. The problem is when you reel in your loot, the XPs will get to the player, but the item will actually just end up getting shoved over here, and you can see it ends up over here. Don't worry, the collection is really simple. All we have to do is place in a chest just over here, and we place in a hopper going into that. We'll make a little teeny bowl here for the water to come in, and now we'll just break that water, and that will make this one over here flowing, pulling everything into your collection. Now we'll do the same thing on this side over here with a chest, because sometimes the items don't go towards the player, they kind of bounce off stuff and they end up going the opposite direction. So we'll also have a collection over here. Now for single player, this is all you need in order to get the farm going. You first start out by clicking up against the wool here, and then you point downwards for the sign and just hold down right click and go AFK. And you can do F3 plus T, and then when this screen comes up, release your mouse keys. Now your player automatically continue to remember to hold down that right click button, even though you don't have any buttons held down on your mouse or keyboard. And that's how you AFK. Now if you want the loot to not go into the player's inventory, make sure to fill it up and have the trapdoor shut. Now when you AFK, the player will pick up the XPs, but the loot will end up over here and will slowly make its way up and then into the collection system. And the best fishing rod to use is a Lure 3, Luck of the Sea 3, Unbreaking 3, as well as Mending. Using the Mending, it will automatically repair the rod, allowing you to AFK indefinitely. Now when it comes to multiplayer, I have this extra little redstone component. This just prevents you from accidentally stop fishing while you're AFKing on a server because of latency. Notice that the trapdoor opens and closes very briefly. This is used to have the player reel in and then reel out in that short period of time. With latency on server, it's possible that you miss this short period. And that's where this slow fading clock comes in. On multiplayer servers, you can first try without this extra redstone, but if you're getting latency and it's not AFK fishing properly, then just come in and build this. So after you build the rest, you just remove this block here, and we're going to place in the clock over here with 9 blocks going out of this direction, and we'll just double that up to give us something to place everything on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually read the signal that comes off of this sensor, and we're going to put that into a slow fading clock. This is done with some redstone, but most of it's done with comparators. Comparators are pointing into this direction with 4 of them. Then we have them flipped for this direction, going away from the redstone. This is all put into a big loop with some more redstone there. And then we're going to continue with 2 more comparators over here. This is just to make the signal a bit stronger when the entire thing resets. So now you can see this is a slow fading clock that eventually will run out of signal and then it will turn off. So now we just need to add a component in order to automatically have it restart up on its own. We're going to place in some blocks like this. Then we're going to run this all the way over here, and we're going to have that torch do the opposite of whatever's going on top of that block. Then we're going to run it over here and then put it into a repeater. And then now once the entire thing turns off, you'll see it automatically turn itself back on again. So the torch is going to now turn on, and that's going to restart the whole thing. So if this clock turns off, that means that the player up there probably isn't actually fishing, and we need to restart him. And the way we do this is by putting a sticky piston here. We're going to put a target block there so the signal runs into that. Then we're going to run our signal from here over to our redstone contraptions over here. We're then going to connect up this with redstone, and we're going to put in a short delay right in there to make it so that the trapdoor will stay open long enough so you can actually click on it. And this is the repeater you can adjust for latency on multiplayer. So now when this fades, if the player hasn't reeled out their fishing rod, notice that it will automatically activate the trapdoor, giving the player another attempt. And then you can come in here and place in wool all these little places so that noises don't get to the sensor. Now you can also put in a lever here and power it. That will turn off this fade clock. In case you're not using the farm, it won't constantly activate the trapdoor. So to build a simple one, you want to start out by first coming in with some blocks to hold in the water. We're also going to have a container where we're going to put the loot in. The loot's going to be picked up by a hopper. And right above that, we're going to use a fence. This is going to let the fishing rod hit up against it and get it perfectly lined in the water. We're also going to come in with some blocks on either side to hold the water in. And we're going to have a sign, which is also going to hold the water, plus allow the person to click on it with the fishing rod without actually reeling in or out. Now we need something to hold the water in on this side, so we're going to place in a trapdoor. Then we're going to put our water in right where the fence is, so we waterlogged it. And lastly, we're going to put in the pressure plate. Pressure plate is used to move up and down when it detects the fish actually pulling on the bobber. If I aim right on the edge like I am right now, I'll be clicking on the pressure plate. So now if I right click, I pull in the rod. If I right click again, it's going to send it out. But now the pressure plate moved down. I'm now going to right click. I'm actually going to be clicking on the sign behind, which does nothing. So if we do F3 plus B, we can see the bobber. Notice that the pressure plate is currently downwards, and that makes the pressure plate really thin. And then when a fish pulls on that bobber, it will release the pressure plate, allowing it to come back up again, becoming big. And then once again, it will block my view. So I accidentally click on the pressure plate, causing the player to pull in the rod. So just by aiming correctly, you can AFK fish this way. XP goes into the player, and then the loot is picked up by the hopper and put into this chest. Now check out this playlist all about other simple farms and machines, or this one where obtain 99% of all items in the game just starting on a single block. And thank you guys so much for sharing my contraptions with other Minecrafters. It is by far the best way to show support. And if you're a part of my Discord, you can stay up to date on all the crazy things that I'm currently working on. Thank you all for leaving a like and subscribing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!